Welcome back. We're going to be looking at wrapping up the menus in the game and how to complete the game loop so the player can start new games after finishing. Now let's jump right in. In the last video, I left you a little challenge of completing the 2 players and the quit button. Now let's take a look at how I would do that. So in the game controller script, we already have a method that's start 1 player, so we could just go ahead and make another one. I'll call it start 2 players. And as you could probably see, there's a lot of stuff here that we would set regardless of how many players are playing. So let's create another method. I'm gonna call it it's gonna be a private method actually. It's gonna be initialize game. We're gonna want to make in menu is equal to false always, reset the score, reset the game. So we could copy that over. And we're also going to have the UI manager set everything up. So let's move that over. And now what we could do is just call initialize game. I'll clean this up. Copy this over for our start 2 players and just set the right paddle to not be AI. And now that we have this method, we could go ahead and call it in our UI. Go into our UI manager, doing our menu canvas, and inside the 2 players button, we're going to go down and add an entry here and pass in our game controller. And then just set it there. Let's see what that looks like. So now both players are playing. And now let's quickly take a look on how we can make the second paddle be controlled by different keys. So to do that, we're going to have to access our input settings. So we can go to edit and then project settings and then in the input tab. So what I'm going to do is, since we only use the vertical axis, I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to call one vertical left, and this is going to be only using our S and W key, so I'm going to get rid of this down and up. And then for the one we just duplicated, I'm going to call it vertical right, and this is going to be using the up and down key, so you can just get rid of the S and W. And now the way we'll call the input is in our paddle script. So here where we're getting our input, what we're going to do, this is a little bit hacky really, I'll admit it, but it still works. So we could just do plus and then our side, and with this toString, it's going to turn that side into what, like if it was on the left, it's going to turn it to kind of like this. So as you can see, we already know which paddle is which just by having this label here. It's important to make sure that there's a space here because it won't do it automatically, so you gotta make sure you add that space in there. So let's go check that out. So let's hit 2 players, and now I could see that, you know, the right paddle is controlled with the arrow keys and the left one is with W and S. Alright, now let's take a look at how we could implement the quit button, and this admittedly is pretty easy. So what I'll do now is just create a public method, and it's going to be just quit. And what we do here is just call application.quit, and let's go and see what that looks like. And it's not working, right? Or at least it shouldn't be, because if you recall, we never actually added it under here into our button. So let's do that now, and then go to our game controller and quit. And let's try it again, and we still don't know if it's working, right? Because we have to make a build first. Unity has a lot of ways to handle what device the game is being run on, so we could do a quick check by saying if with a number signal, if, and then this got to be all in all caps. We say unity underscore editor, and then we gotta end that if, so end if. So this is gonna only run, and it's only going to compile when it's in the Unity editor. So this code, whatever's inside between, you know, here and here, won't make it to the final build. But just so we can make sure and test it in the editor, we're gonna just say Unity editor and then editor application dot is playing, and we're going to set that equal to false, and this is going to effectively just quit us from the game. So let's see what that looks like. If I hit quit, you'll notice that it's essentially the same as hitting the play button once it's playing, and that's just kind of helpful to know like things are actually working and not waiting until you make your build. So now the problem that we have is once we're playing and one of the players reaches the winning score, nothing happens. So what we're gonna have to do is make a menu for that, and let's go ahead and do that now. So let's go into our UI manager and create another canvas, and let's name this game over canvas. And for now, let's just go into both of these, or at least the menu canvas, and set the alpha to 0 so we could focus on the game over canvas. Or alternatively, you could just, hide it. So let's look at the game over canvas, and what this is going to do is just display the information of who won, and then give us the ability to either replay the game or like go to the menu. So that's what we're going to do. So let's create the UI that shows that. And lucky for us, we already have a button prefab that we could just reuse. So I'm going to go into the menu canvas, and that title text that we had, I'm going to go ahead and prefab that so we can just have that around for our other UI. So here for our game over, I'm going to reuse that title text and just call it game over, and I'll probably make the font a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to duplicate this and then make the font even smaller, and it's just going to contain let's say the winner is, and actually what I'll do is I'll create an empty, and make sure that it's going to be a rect transform. I'll cover this text here, or I'll have it extend a little more, and I'm going to call it winner announcement. And I'm going to drop this one in as a child. I'm going to make it a little smaller just to encompass the text, and then make a duplicate of it and bring it down. And this is just going to say, just so we could see how much space it's going to take up, I'm just going to put player 1 and just mess around with the look of it. And I'm gonna have the name of the winner be in a different color just to add more color, I guess, to the scene. Make it a yellow, and make sure you rename your text or your game objects. That way you keep your project organized and know exactly what is what. I'm gonna name this winner is text, and this one it's gonna be like winner text, I guess. And you can just keep messing around with the text, move it around to your liking. But this looks good for now, and I'm just going to make sure to make this a prefab. And one thing I forgot is for our game over canvas, since it's going to be a UI that's going to be fading in and out, I'm going to go ahead and add our fadeable UI script to it. And now it has a canvas group that could fade in and out. Let's look at scripting the logic to display this new UI canvas. So let's jump into our game controller script. So right here where we check if the game is over and we're not in the menu, so we know that somebody won, what we'll do is call a method, but we haven't yet created it, but it's going to be in the UI manager script, and it's going to be show game over, and we're going to pass in a side, so the side that won, which is the side that scored the last, right? So we'll do side, we'll pass in underscore side, and let's go and create that in the UI manager class. So in here we're going to do a public void show game over and give it a paddle.side, and we can just call it side. So now we're going to need a reference to the game over UI. So under the menu UI, we're going to do another serialized field, private fadeable UI, and we're going to call it game over UI. So what we'll do in show game over, we're going to do game over UI dot fade in. And we don't want it to fade in instantly, so we're going to pass in false. And to display the text, what we're going to do is create a serialized field, private text mesh pro UGUI, and we're going to call it winner text. And we're going to say winner text dot text is equal to, well, first of all, actually what we're going to have to do is check the condition of what side won. So we do if side is equal to side dot left, then we know that player 1 is the winner, so we're going to do winner text.text is equal to player 1, and else, and just to be explicit, I'm going to do else if side is equal to paddle.side.right, and we would do winner text is equal to player 2. So now what we're going to do is hook up these two components in the editor. Let's go to our UI manager, and our game over UI is this game over UI canvas. And inside the winner announcement, we're going to give it the winner text. So we'll go back to the UI manager, and that's our winner text. So if we hit play, you're going to see that nothing really happened with our new UI. It's always going to be displaying. So let's just, every time we hit start, let's make sure all the UI gets sorted out. So in our UI manager, what we can do is create a start function that will take care of just that. So in our menu UI is going to fade in, and it's going to be instantly, and our game over UI is going to fade out, and it's going to be true for instant. Now let's take a look at that. But first I'm going to make sure that the menu canvas is set active, and it's kind of crazy right now, but just bear with me. And you see that there goes our menu. Let's hit one player and then lose on purpose, and then you see the player 2 one, and then we get our menu here. And you could still interact with the input, but it's up to you if you want to leave this that way. I mean, it doesn't really affect anything. So now we just got to work on doing the replay game or return to menu buttons. Let's see how we can manage those. So the way we'll do this is, since in our UI manager we already have a method that is going to show the game over screen, let's create one that shows the main menu screen. So we go public void show menu, and this shouldn't require a side. So what we're gonna do is the game over UI is gonna fade out, and I'm gonna set the instant to false, and the menu UI is gonna fade in, and that's also gonna be false. So in our game controller script, we can, down here in our UI methods, let's make one that says public void go to menu, and in here we're going to call UI manager dot show menu. And then we also want to do kind of what we do in the start of in our wake, where we set our in menu stuff is equal to true, and then our paddles AI and all that. So we could make us a small little method, that way we're not calling those two lines all the time. Something like show or do menu, and then we're gonna give these two lines in, and we'll just call do menu here. Should probably come up with a better name, but that's all I can think of right now. So do menu, and in go to menu we're gonna do menu, and in do menu we could probably set the scores to reset our scores. And then so we call that there, and we should be able to call this from one of our menu buttons and go back to the menu. So in our game over canvas, I'm just gonna hide this one real quick. Game over canvas, I'm going to go to the return to menu and add an entry, give it our game controller, and in our game controller go to menu, and let's see how that works. So go player 1, then we hit return to menu, and we don't have a ball yet, so let's take a look at that. So the way we could really do all that resetting, we already have a method called reset game, which will put our paddles back into position as well as the ball. So we could call that in our do menu. And just one thing, we got to make sure that the ball, the game object, we set it back to true. Its active state. Oh, so one thing I guess I forgot to call is after we set our score, we gotta make sure our UI manager refreshes those scores. So we can do update score text and pass in the left score and right score, and that should be working fine. And we hit return to menu and we're back in the menu. So now for the replay button, what we could do is if we go down here to our UI methods and create a method called public void replay, and in here really all we need to call is this initialize game method, since it'll take care of resetting the ball's position and the paddle's positions and reset the score and everything, and it'll start pretty much the game over again. So we could call initialize game. So now what we need to do is go into our game over canvas and then our replay button and then add an entry for our game controller. And let's take a look at that. So if we lose and then hit replay, we get an error. We got an error because the ball could not start a coroutine because it was inactive. So this should be pretty easy to fix. And now what I kind of want to do is change up some things in our code. So initialize game, I feel like it should, or at least reset game, it should also take into account that the ball needs to be set active. So go game object set active is equal to true, instead of doing it, you know, every other time we did, kind of like we did here in the do menu, because it's going to call reset game regardless. So now let's take a look at that. Then we hit replay and we could start the game over again, but as you can see the menu isn't really going away, so that shouldn't be too hard. So here in our replay method, what we're gonna have to do is do UI manager on game start, so kind of like we do when we first start the game, except now that we have to change a couple things now. Since we have another UI to worry about, we got to make sure to add a fade out for our game over UI. So let's do fade out, and that's going to be equal to false, the instant variable. So we're going to play, and one player, we're going to lose, and if we hit replay, you can see that our score didn't reset. So in game controller, initialize game, right after we set our left score and right score, we're going to do UI manager dot update score text, and we're going to pass in the left score and right score. Yeah, so every time we initialize the game, we should also make sure to update our score text. So let's take a look at that. So we're playing, we lose, then we hit replay, and then the game starts over again, and then we could lose and replay. And as you can see, we have now effectively made a game. Really, this is something you could play now, and there might be some bugs here and there. If you have any that I probably missed, please let me know, and then we could make an episode about just fixing anything that's wrong with the game. But on the next episodes, we're probably going to look at some audio and add some audio to the game and make it a little bit more lively with some music. Tune into that and make sure to catch the next episode. I'll see you later. Bye.